Number one desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air. That's how I roll. I got tons of soul. I'm a true collectible. Famous, so famous. Number one desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air. That's how I roll. I got change to throw. I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the show, so they know that I still got it, and I never feel sorry. Yeah, top of the world. The world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world. When I hear him come like my fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this up. You can sing my song if you want, I know you want it. It's always kinda funny, yeah, cause I know.
Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of our original series, My Story. This is Series 2, Episode number 4. A.C.E Podcast Nation, your home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts and more. And My Story, like all our other shows and series, available in video format, youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation. Please do subscribe, click that bell for notifications every time we upload or go live. New interviews or content. There's a lot of it. Please follow us on social media for more information on upcoming shows, series and guests, and of course you can get the audio versions of every single show and interview we do at your favourite radio or podcast platform. Just search Ace Podcast Nation and there's about 400 odd shows there, plenty to get through with lots of interesting guests and alike. The My Story series is a bit unique as we take our guests through their life and their career, from their upbringing all the way through to present day as they share their story and some anecdotes and stuff along the way. Series 1 featured actors, footballers, broadcasters, authors and more. Series 2 is no different, but the tagline is simple: real conversations with real people. And I am delighted, thrilled, excited to speak to today's guest. He is one of my oldest friends, in fact. He is an author, a radio DJ, and the man behind Dads Against Depression. It is Mr. Adam Carew. How are you, my friend?
Mate, good to see you. I'm good, yeah. Been a long time. Like we said off air, mate, it's been about 25 years I've known you now. So it's been too long since I do keep in contact with you silently. I do watch your podcasts and yeah, I'm very excited to be on, mate. So thanks for having me.
It's all good, mate. It's all good. And you're doing a bit of broadcasting as well, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But what I like to do with my guests and this series particularly is I like to take them back to the start, where it all began, so to speak. So kind of tell the people where you're from, your upbringing, just a bit about growing up and that.
Yeah. So as you know, grew up in Cardiff. Spent most of my life in an area of Cardiff called Danes Court. I was very lucky that my dad and my mum managed to get us. I wouldn't say Llandaff North was a bad place, but Danes Court is, a step up, and I think my dad felt he'd made it. So grew up with 3 other brothers, one younger, 2 older. Spent a lot of my time roaming the streets in Danes Court and playing for Danes Court FC. Did once have a trial for Cardiff City, but didn't get it, so I just continued with Danes Court. Moved out about 18. My mum and dad split up around about the same time, so that was a bit of a tough time when I was growing up. And then moved in with a few of my mates when I was growing up in Cardiff. We lived in a house just down by TGI Fridays on Newport Road. Lived with them. That was a very, very good few years of my life. And now I live in Torquay. So yeah, in general, mate, I was very, very lucky as a child growing up that my dad made a lot of sacrifices, and my mum, to get us to where we were. And as we said off air, I think my childhood, your childhood, we had very good childhoods from where we were brought up. So Danescourt wasn't too far away from Rada. I joined the Rada Arms at 16, and that's where I met yourself. You were
Indeed.
you were a little chef in the kitchen, and I was a little front of house waiter, and we were, as we say, the dream team. And yeah, we've kept in touch ever since, mate. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's so like I think I played for Danescourt as well, but I think I was in the year above you.
Yes.
So I think we only played together like in the really younger age group. Like
Yeah, the
once
early
or
days.
Twice, and then when they split the age groups, and that I was in the age above. But I obviously like knew who you were and whatever. And then when you came to the Rada Arms, God rest her soul.
Oh,
My missus will love that. I still talk about that pub to the day. But yeah, and then you come back and we hit it off as if we had little kids again. And
yeah,
we went to Magaluf at the same time.
Oh,
was it Magaluf
yeah.
or Benidorm?
No, it was
Benidorm
Magaluf.
Magaluf.
Magaluf, it was.
I get confused by the two holidays, mate.
I always remember it, mate, because we all went out there on the same time. We were out there for Independence Day, so it was July 4th.
There we go, mate. I can't
You, Adam
those
Frost,
holidays.
Frost, Ian David, and it was me, Ian Nicholson, Dave Sturdy, Sam West, and there was one other person, Pete Ryder.
What's that? Yeah,
Oh, mate.
Mental holidays.
Literally, like, think about that now. I went on that holiday, a 10-day Magaluf wreck up at the age of 16.
Jesus. Yeah, yeah, my 16-year-old is not going to Magaluf. I can tell you that much. That is not happening.
Get that out there right now.
Yes, we'll have that indeed. But like, so obviously you've written a book on your experiences with mental health, which I will get to in just a minute. Like, I'm really interested to talk about that. And you talk about how things changed for you, sort of after the birth of your own son as well.
Yeah.
And like, as you know, and everyone knows, I've talked about it on numerous different shows and about different parts of it. Like, I've had battles with addictions and mental health and stuff myself since my teen years, really. And I use Ace Podcast Nation to promote mental health awareness a lot. But you said something to me just now, before we started recording, which kind of interests me and falls into the first sort of point which I was going to talk about. And it was that you didn't understand me on some of the stuff that I was going through, dealing with, and the way I was back then.
Yeah.
But you do now.
Yeah.
So, like, to give people a bit more of any kind of insight to that, like, back in those days when you're sort of 17, 18, 19, I'm a couple of years older, I just used to drink constantly, all day, every day, because I was not happy at all.
Yeah.
And that, I was doing other stuff as well, which I shouldn't have been doing. And like, so in a public setting, you were always happy. You were always really positive. And that's something which really like stands out to me. You were such a positive person, such a happy person.
Yeah.
And then I was like almost the polar opposite to that, because I was very negative. I'm still very negative, by the way.
Very within yourself.
I was grumpy. I was very like, and I was like openly. I was like, being honest. Like, I was depressed and suffering with these things, but it was quite clear that I had issues.
Yeah.
But obviously, you're talking like the early 2000s, late 90s. It is a very different world in terms of how people approach mental health. And I was lucky. I had people who could spot those signs and see it. But the reason I kind of bring that up is because one of the things which, on the various times I've talked about mental health and anxiety and all these different things to different people on different series, and it's come up, is there's kind of two things which always come up, and that's that mental health doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter what your career is, how your life's going.
Oh, no.
Just because someone is outward, and just because someone's outwardly happy or sad, doesn't mean that they aren't suffering with whatever it may be behind closed doors. And I think
100%, mate.
that is kind of something which these days I think is a bit better. Like, in the way that people perceive it, but I still think there's a lot of work to go with it. But like, speak to me about like your journey with mental health and stuff, and kind of when you feel that it affected you, started to affect you, and obviously hindsight's a thing, isn't it? Where you can look back.
It is. And just a quick note on what you just said about me not understanding you when I was growing up. At that point, my dad was also suffering depression. Now, at that point, depression wasn't a thing. And I'm going to be honest, it was something that was bounded about, and I never really understood it. And my mum didn't really understand what my dad was probably going through. You know, being out of work was a massive stress for my dad. He wanted to be the bread earner. And I know you lost your dad.
Yeah.
And I remember one night sitting on a bridge with you and Vicky. Vicky Jones was my girlfriend at the time. And you were both talking about your troubles. And that gave me a massive insight to, you were never shy when the conversation came out. You were never shy to say that you were feeling like crap, or you weren't feeling up to it, or life was getting, you didn't keep it in, but you didn't throw it on anyone. You know, it wasn't the case of, oh, look at me, I'm Simon, I'm down in the dumps. And I suppose there's two moments in my life where everything changed. Becoming a dad, 100% changed my mental attitude towards life. It put worldly pressure on my shoulders, which I wasn't expecting. I was just like, wow, all of a sudden I've got someone else that relies on me. I can't just walk out of a job. I have to stick this job that I absolutely bloody hate. And all of a sudden I felt like I was in a cage, in a box. And I couldn't get out of that box, because every time someone said, why don't you do this or do that? I was like, yeah, but what about that? Oh yeah, you're right there. So yeah, every option you're giving me adds depression or anxiety to me. And then the next stage was my dad being diagnosed with cancer and sadly dying in 2016. I was only watching a programme last night with Martin Kemp and Roman Kemp. And Martin Kemp cried because he still misses his dad. Now, I don't want to wish that upon anyone, but I understand you so much more now from the early days, because, oh my God, like, I was not, mate, I was not expecting to lose my dad, and I wasn't expecting to feel worldly pressure from being a dad. Now, I've worked through the parenting bit. I've got to that point now. I'm not with the mother anymore. We cracked, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I told you nothing's going to be, I'll tell you everything. I do believe that me and the mother of my child split up because of my mental health. I sourced attention elsewhere. I wasn't happy with the attention I was getting from her. I wasn't understanding her. She wasn't understanding me. We probably had my son too early in the relationship. We'd only been together 18 months. And her words to me at the time, when I was battling against, can we do this? Are we ready to have a child? Are we in a financial position to have a child? Are we mentally ready? Her words to me were, if we're going to be together forever, we can do anything. Now, she might watch this, she might not. But I took those words and I ended up asking her to marry me. That all went down the pan. And I was left on my own, mate. I was left in a house, seeing my son 50% of the time without the rock of my life. Now, I didn't know how much losing a parent was going to really, really affect me. I feel like I've lost my backbone. I feel like I've lost 100% of my support. Now, don't get me wrong, my mum's amazing. But my mum can't be my dad. And I think mine and my mum's relationship really frayed when my mum left my dad. And I was team dad throughout all of that. And I saw my dad cry on numerous occasions. And then the big C came along in 2014/15. He had pancreatic cancer. He had the operation to remove it. He went through the chemotherapy. But unfortunately, and you will resonate with this big time, he didn't tell us everything. He kept a lot from us because, do you know what? He was scared of dying. And he didn't want to tell us what he was going through. He didn't want us to be involved. He shut us out of his life for the last 3 weeks. We had to kind of find a key for his house. And luckily, you know, God rest his soul, I saw him on the day before he died. We kind of let ourselves into his house. And I couldn't believe what I saw, if I'm honest. I still can't believe what I saw that day. He was about 6 stone, and he was a day away from dying. And I've battled ever since, mate, if I'm honest, silently. And that's why I thought I'd do the book, and I want to do this, because I get it, mate. I do. And like you said, it does not discriminate, because I was always a happy-go-lucky guy. Always. And to be fair, mate, 9 times out of 10, so were you. You know, when we were playing Radar 5 and when we were playing on the fruit machines and we were having a cigarette by the fruit machines with a pint of Stella or a pint of Heineken Export. You know, mate, we always put our best face forward, and we were talking about this off air. That's where social media comes in, because you're faced with everyone else's great lives. And when your life hits rock bottom, the last thing you want to see is your mates getting married. The last thing you want to see is your mates buying a new house, getting a new $100,000 a year job, and you're like, I've got nothing. I'm struggling to get out of bed in the morning. I'm struggling to fix a $25,000 a year job. You know, I'm struggling. And we don't tell people for some reason. We don't. For those first few months of depression, and I couldn't get myself out of bed. I remember the ex, at the end of this room, actually, she was like, "You're going to have to phone in sick." I said, "I can't phone in sick. I'm the general manager." Oh, exactly. So what do you want me to do about this mental health situation? Do I grin and bear it, or do I give in? And for some reason, mate, there's no middle ground. You either grin and bear it and you go rock bottom, and you try and fight your way right back to the top, and however hard that feels, you try and try and try. Or unfortunately for males more than females, but as females are also now, people are ending their lives because there's no other option. And to be fair, I've never wanted to do that, but I can understand the people who are doing it, because life feels long when you've got addictions. I've had addictions to cannabis. You know, I've struggled so hard, and I'm now not seeing my son because of it. You know, it's so hard, mate. And on one hand, people want to give you a pat on the back and they want to give you a cuddle. But on the other hand, they want to go, "Why are you smoking weed? Why are you drinking so much? Why are you staying in bed so long? Why aren't you going to work? Why aren't you doing all these things that you used to do?" And the answer is, I can't bloody tell you. It's all in here. This is so powerful.
It's a difficult one, mate. Like, going back to what you said about your father, and like you couldn't believe what you saw, and you struggled to trying to get your head around it afterwards. Like, so, like, and you know, I'm not a trained psychologist and stuff like that by any means, but I could refer to what I went through. Like, I was 16 when my dad died, and probably about a month before he died, he was so desperate to try and fix our relationship, which, looking back, it wasn't even that broken. Like, it was just that we just didn't get on. I was a teenager, he was a dad, and we just clashed. But
it happens, mate,
he kind of arranged for me to kind of have a couple of beers with him and smoke in the house and watch some football with him, and I was like 16, so that was like a big step. And
big moment.
During that, he became ill, so I had to phone an ambulance, and because to the ambulance cab and that, and because I got so like het up and upset and stuff, I can't really remember it, but I ended up getting arrested because I was shouting at the ambulance people, like, to try and get him to help and whatever, and I got myself so like round in circles and messed up there, and then worried about what was, like, he was going to die and this and that I got arrested age 16, and my mum was out like for the night, so she's come home to my dad going to hospital, and you know, there was, at that time, it was just, I don't know, it was nothing really, but about a month later he died of a heart attack, and for probably 20 years, only till very recently, I blame myself for that, because I was convinced that what he had done that night to try and just purely to try and have a better relationship with me had been what had killed him. So like living with that guilt was difficult, right? And it took me a very long time to even talk about it. Like, and that's the first time I think I've talked about that part of it on a podcast.
I'm glad,
anyway.
mate. I'm glad because it's. Do you know what?
But like,
Everyone
what your
says
dad,
talk
that's
about
what I was going to
anger.
say, sorry, mate.
Go on.
What your dad was trying to do by, I'm guessing, by blocking you and your brothers and whatever and your family out of like that last few weeks is like he would have known like how ill he was. So he
Yeah.
was trying to spare you having to see him
Yeah.
deteriorate and go through that.
Do you
Which
know
is
what,
obviously
mate? Like,
not what you would have wanted necessarily,
Yeah.
but
No, you've nailed it on the head because like, the reason I can back that up, exactly what you just said is, we all thought that he got through it. So he had this massive 8-hour operation to get rid of the pancreatic cancer. I never Googled it because I didn't want to know any of the stuff that was going on. But apparently when they do this operation, they leave 5% of the pancreas in there because they have to. Now that's the part of the pancreas that could still be cancerous. So he rung me up 6 months, probably 8 months later. I never had a phone call off my dad late at night, and it was like 10:30 at night. I answered the phone, and he said, Ad, I've got 6 months to live. And I cried. And he said to me, I wish I had told you now. And do you know what? From that moment to the day he died, he didn't speak to his sister for the last 3 weeks of his life. And she, just like you've got that little bit of guilt, and you're like, oh, do you know what? She's like, oh, but what if I could have spoken to him? I was like, Auntie Carol, he didn't want to speak to us. We let ourselves into his house to try and save his life. And I walked into his flat in Radda, and there was a wall, and then there was his chair. And I walked into the wall, and I looked, and I just dropped to my knees because I could not believe what I saw. And I went, Dad, what are you doing? What? You're not eating. Why aren't you in hospital? Like, look at you, get in hospital. Oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks for that. Oh, bloody hell, I'm dying, am I? I was like, Dad, have you seen yourself? I said, I got to call someone. So what I did afterwards is I went and saw his doctor in Llandaff North, Dr. Black. And I'm the only brother that did this, the only son. And I had closure because he turned around to me and he looked me square in the eyes and he said, let me tell you this, your dad had everything that he wanted. He wanted to go the way he went, and he wanted to save you all from any heartbreak and any anxiety, any depression that may have come with him dying. He tried to save you. And do you know what? I think back through all the few months that we tried our best to get him to do stuff, drink his milkshakes or take his medication or go to the hospital. Unfortunately, none of it was going to save him because when it happens, just like with your dad, I'm a firm believer in fate. We've all got a time. We've all got a time that we're going to go. I just wish my dad and your dad's wasn't so young. And for you, mate, like 16 is bloody no age to lose your dad, mate. And I hated seeing what you went through as a human being and as a friend, as a work colleague, as a football mate. I couldn't relate. I could never relate until probably today.
But it's difficult, isn't it? Because, and like I said to you just now before we started recording as well, like in 2008 where I had a serious car crash and my life changed completely. I lost I ended up losing my job and having spinal surgery and all this different stuff, and a massive amount of pressure on my wife, and we had like young kids and all this. Like when people, like the people who I thought would be there weren't there. But what I will say is when my dad died, there was friends there who stuck by me for years and years afterwards and really tried their best to help me, but they didn't understand because they hadn't been through it. And if you've got, if you're like, if you think of it like we were kids, like if you're 16 and you've got both parents and all your grandparents or whatever, like it's very difficult to relate to another 16-year-old who's lost his father and is struggling and can't get through it, and it's a year later and he still seems to be having issues getting through it. Like a kid is not equipped to deal with that.
100%, mate.
But like equally, what I would say to you as well about your dad, is, mate, is like, we're both fathers.
Yeah.
Is you would do. I'm not saying you would do the same, but you would do everything
Anything.
you can to spare your kids, your loved ones, the pain of seeing you a certain way, or seeing you, you know, becoming seriously ill, or whatever it may be. You're always going to try and protect the people you love from seeing you go through stuff like that. And like, even over the last 12 years, I've not told people like how bad my pain is, or when I've lost the feeling in my leg, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But eventually I've had to, because I had to make sure that it didn't get worse or whatever, so I'd have to tell the doctor, whatever it may be. But like, we're always going to try and protect the people we love. And I think with mental health, one of the reasons why the suicide rate is so high in men is because of that. They don't want to put their issues onto
On
the
their
other
kids.
people.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily like a case of, oh, I'm a man, so I'm not going to talk about it. I think it's more a case of, I don't want them to feel like I feel now. Do you see what I mean? Like, some days, even now, like, and I said this, I can't remember who I said it to the other day. Like, it might have even been you, actually, on text. like, so for me now, like, I'm in pain 24/7. I know that. That's what life is now.
Yeah.
But everything else is going very well. Like, my podcast and YouTube channel is grown way past I ever thought it would.
Yeah,
I'm
it's amazing.
speaking to like icons and heroes and all these different interesting people. Like, things are going good. My kids are teenagers. They're very, very well behaved. They're doing well in school. Like, things are going well. But like, recently, I've woken up in the mornings and I've struggled to get
I'm the
through
same,
days.
mate. I said that
And
to you.
it's
The pandemic.
It's just part of when you've got that kind of dark cloud which has affected you. It does come back, and there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes. And you kind of got to ride the wave. And like you said something which I wanted to refer back to. Like you said, you've never kind of thought down like the suicide sort of route necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, I did. I have over like from probably 16 onwards. Like, but what happened was, when I was 16, I had this responsibility of. So my dad died. I had my mum, who was on her own, and then I had my brother, who was a lot younger than me, 4 years younger than me, and he had to deal with the same things I had to deal with. So I just had to. I was so focused on making sure they were all right, but I never kind of worked through anything myself.
You forgot yourself.
So then what that meant is, when my brother was like old enough and grown up, I kind of obviously left him to his own devices. But then I just drank more and more and more. And then because I've had my own kids, I would never do it.
True.
So no matter how bad because I would never want, like, how can I put it? When my kids get to be when the youngest one gets to 18, I will be thrilled, because I will know that they will never have to go through what I went through as a kid, if that makes sense. I know that's a really bizarre way of looking at it. Like, I'm 40 this year. I really couldn't give less of a shit. However, when I get to, or if I get to towards 47, that's going to be a massive anxiety point for me, because that's the age my dad died, and that's a young age.
Oh, mate, I'm with you. Yeah.
And that's going to probably stress me out. And I can't, but one thing which does give me comfort is that when I get to 47, I think I worked out the other day, my kids will be like 23, 21 and 18 or something.
Isn't it weird how we have to like think about those things? And you're right, mate. You are right. And back to
it's a weird way of thinking,
thing.
I know, but it's how you kind of.
I've done it recently. You know, if I die when my dad dies, I've got less than 30 years, and it does play on your mind. And back to the suicide thing, never will I do that to my son.
No.
But I tell you what, I do think life is bloody long, and I should never think like that. You know, the saying is, life is short. when you've got mental health and you're battling through losing a loved one or losing your father or, whatever it is you're dealing with, days feel long. You look at how you're going to get through the day and add a pandemic into that and add the fact you don't have any social face-to-face contact at the moment. Mate, I've had 2 or 3 bad days on the trot because it's all got too much for me. And I've had, it explains it in the book, but I've been sectioned twice over the last 24 months. I've been sectioned twice because everything's got too much and it's all boiled out in psychosis. So I've turned into this superhuman being that I think I'm Santa or I think I'm God. Mate, next thing you know, I wake up in a hospital and I'm banged up for 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And the pandemic has not helped whatsoever. But I tell you what has helped, not being rushed back to work, not being rushed back to normality. So exactly what you've just said. Unfortunately, that 1% sometimes that is the negative outweighs the 99% of good. And I don't know why mental health does that, but your 1 day out of 30 that could be bad outweighs the 29 days that have been amazing. And that's mental health in a nutshell. You just go, oh yeah, but what about that? Oh, but I'm feeling this. Yeah, but yesterday, mate, you were skipping around the place, And you forget the good times, mate. And that's what I've tried to detail in the book, Try and have little things that keep you on, putting ticks on your calendar for good days and crosses on the days that are bad. And then when you get to the end of the month, you can go, I've only had 3 bad days. What am I worried about? But those bad days, when those clouds are above your head, mate, it's very hard to see the sunshine through them.
Yeah, spot on, mate. So what I want to ask you is, obviously you mentioned the birth of your son being like a point where things, from a mental health point of view, changed.
Yeah.
Like, was there a particular moment or point where you kind of went through, or when you realised, or maybe even the people around you realised, that this wasn't like necessarily just like the anxiety of being a new father and, or just a father generally. It was just, there was actually like a mental health issue which needed to be addressed, as opposed to, just general sort of anxieties, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose, if I'm honest, I had like a perfect storm or the unperfect storm. Everything seemed to happen at the same time. So the relationship broke down at the same time. Dad had the cancer. I was in a job that I actually hated more than anything. Like, I really struggled in the job. I was a general manager of a small seafood restaurant in Torquay, and I just saw no way out with anything. I just thought, I've got nothing. I can't lose this job because I've got to provide, because my missus is on maternity leave and she's going to be going back to work and earning bugger all because she can only go back to work part-time. I got to work all the hours under the sun because I'm in hospitality. So there was days where I was working 8 in the morning. I was working 8 in the morning till 12 o'clock at night so my assistant manager could have the day off. I hated it, mate. I hated everything. And at the same time, my mental health just went like bang, from 0 to 100. And no one around me could understand. Like, I was calling my mum and, I can't do this, mum. I can't do this. The girlfriend, or the fiance at the time, was like, what the hell is going on with this guy now? Like,
yeah,
what are you? Like, who is this guy?
Let's talk about that a little bit. It must have been like difficult. And like, one thing which perhaps I haven't touched on shows which I've done about mental health, we have talked about different mental health illnesses and anxiety disorders and all these different things, and we've talked about people's experiences. But one thing we haven't touched on maybe that much is the pressure which it puts on other people. Like, that must have been a lot to deal with for your missus at the time. Obviously, she was pregnant as well, which was...
and to make things worse, I was sourcing attention while she was pregnant. So all I wanted was people to say nice things about me and say, oh, I like this, I like that. And we just got to a point where communication, like, she was never good at communication face to face. And that, know that from me, mate. I was a front of house. I'll attack any complaint. I'll attack any angry customer. I will attack any situation. But yeah, we just got to the point where we were just 2 different people. So her mental health was like probably better because she was like, I'm going to be a mum. I'm creating this new life inside me. I've got to now step up to the plate. us guys have got 9 months of just absolute anxiety. How am I going to cope with being a dad?
Panic.
How am I going to do this? How are we going to do this? So I put a lot of pressure on her, and it broke. And I do have regrets. I didn't do a lot, if I'm honest, with regards to the relationship breaking down. But I highlighted in the book, mate, my mental health was, I was needy. I was very needy. Where I should have been a rock for her. I should have been a rock for my brothers. I should have been a rock for anyone that needed me. And I suppose that's what I felt like I lost when I lost my dad. I lost my rock. I lost my backbone. I lost my everything. And I didn't realize how much he was my everything. And now my son, I look at him and I go, oh, like I can't have you losing me. I can't have it. Me and the ex have really got a great relationship now, though, so I can say hand on heart that without the cannabis and the psychosis and the mental health issues, I'm a number one dad, just like you are. You know, I do anything for her. You know, she'll text me and be like, "Oh, can you pick Hayden up from school? Can you pick up his prescription from doctors? Can you know, I take him to Spain every year. I do whatever I can for that boy. But the one place I've let myself down is I've wanted to escape with cannabis. Now, anyone who hasn't smoked cannabis do not understand what we do. You were the same with beer. You were the same with alcohol.
I used to smoke, mate. I stopped smoking because of the paranoia. And, like, I even, a few years ago, started again to help with my pain.
Yeah.
And I still couldn't. It still gave me the same issues with why. Like, I'm glad don't get me wrong, I'm glad I stopped I think I stopped when I was about 17, 18. And I moved on to drinking to cope because it just used to make me paranoid, mate. And it used to make me paranoid about people who I could trust, like,
it's not
more
good.
than anyone in the world. And it was just, I knew it was messing with my head, so I had to stop it. And I'm glad I did at the time. But like that kind of tells you the amount of pain I was in as well, by the way. The fact that I was willing to go back.
Yeah.
But you know, luckily now, like, CBD oil and stuff is out where I can
Mate, I was just going to say
get
the
the
same
benefit
thing.
effects without having the psychological effects.
I've done the same thing. I've changed the CBD, mate.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about me too much. I want to talk about you a bit more. And I want to ask you about, like, you brought it up there, like, the cannabis use. Like, if you have got mental health problems, and particularly if you've got, like, anxiety problems, cannabis can do one or two things. Like, CBD oil is really good for anxiety and stuff like that. But smoking it can take you one way or the other. It can. I think it can help you if you're. Depends how you feel when you smoke. Everyone's very different in how they interpret that feeling. So for me, it was I felt very anxious and paranoid. Whereas other people, they settle, they feel relaxed, and you know, I know people now.
Nail on the head. Yeah.
So first of all, foremost, what was it for you? Was it just used to relax you?
Yeah, escapism. I've talked about it recently with my brother. Those 10, 15, 20 minutes where you're trying to knock off the sleep is my worst time. My worst time.
Yeah, because you think about everything, mate.
My head. What cannabis did for me is it drops me down a level. I don't think about any of my problems. I don't think about any of my stresses. I kind of like melt into the sofa. I stick Stranger Things on TV and I just disappear to a whole new world. Yeah. And I sleep like a baby. Now, the main reason I've always smoked cannabis since I was 16, well, I suppose more in my adulthood, but when I was younger, it was more like to be with the boys. In adulthood, when you know when there's a problem when you're smoking it alone. And that's when you think to yourself, hang on, this used to be such a social event. This used to be a happy, laughing, like having the giggles, all that type of stuff. But for me, mate, it's complete escapism. It's complete take me away from the shit that I've got going on. Which is, again, back down to my dad.
Do you think that smoking contributed then further, like, so whilst it might have helped initially, and it used to help bring you down a level, do you think also it did contribute to your mental health deteriorating at certain points?
So,
or do you not? No, I'm asking the question. I'm not telling you it did. I'm asking you whether you think it did.
At the time, with me and Janice...
Sorry, mate.
Probably, go on.
I was just going to say, the reason I ask you that It's because I know there'll be people watching saying that smoking will have made your anxiety worse, will have made this. And it is difficult because if me and you both smoked now together, and we smoked exactly the same joint,
different effects.
You could feel one way and I could feel another way. Like, it completely depends on how your mind interprets that feeling.
Yeah.
It's just so it's very difficult for me to say, well, of course that contributed to your anxiety, or to say it didn't, because I don't know how it made you feel. So that's why I asked that question, and that's why I was interested in if you think that it contributed to your sort of
yes and no, if I'm
issues.
honest. Recently, yes, because I was buying weed off the street, and I was actually sectioned under Section 2 of the Mental Health Act in Stevenage because someone had sold me spice. So I was smoking spice without even knowing it, and yeah, it took me about 4 months just to be able to walk out of my house and be normal again. I went through it for about 4 months. I was on the strongest drugs you can ever imagine. They gave me what they call a depot, and that apparently resets your brain. So they reset my brain. So I was buying street weed, and I would say recently, weed 100% helped my anxiety, 100% helped my depression, but it got me in the worst place I've ever been. And that's why I wrote the book. I hit rock bottom when I was in a mental institution. I was looking around going, what the hell am I doing here? And that's why I'm only ever going to do CBD now, because I can trust that. That's over the counter. That's legal. There never will be a high THC level in there. Yeah, I've had my warnings, and I had a second one in October. So December 2019, I was sectioned. January 2020, I came back out. And then October 2020, I was back in a mental institution in Torquay. So, and they
How
found
did you
spice.
feel, mate, the first time you were sectioned, like when you came around and you realised what had happened? How did you feel? What led, if you don't mind me asking, what led to you being sectioned the first time?
I went on a rampage. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was God. If I'm going to be completely honest, I thought I was God, and I thought I was Santa Claus. And I was going up and down the motorway, and I was doing all these random things, and I locked myself in my house for 3 days. I scribbled all up my walls. I graffitied all my walls inside my house with, like, the River Taff, and where my dad's ex-girlfriend threw herself in the river. I was just uncontrollably manic. They call it a manic episode. They call it mania. They call it elevation. But what they call it is psychosis. So I was in another world completely, mate. I was absolutely cuckoo, gone.
Who led? Like, did a friend or a family member sort of
everyone
have you sectioned, or was there like someone found you? Or
my brother was straight. He got straight in the car. Came from Woking to Torquay. My ex, the mother of my child, found me in the house. I had blue toilet duck all over my face. I was absolutely just rancid. I hadn't washed for days. I hadn't slept for days. When they took me to the hospital, they just said, "Are you happy for us to section him?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I've just been in a room in there for about an hour with him, and he's absolutely batshit crazy." Like, that's not my brother. Like, who is that guy in there? And it was terrible, mate. Like,
it must have been difficult for him.
Worst time of my life. Yeah, it's been tough for everyone. I've caused part of it, but mental health has been the main reason for it. I wouldn't smoke weed if I didn't want to escape. I wouldn't have smoked weed if I didn't have things that I haven't put to rest. And I think things like this podcast, I want people to realise that you can hit rock bottom and you can bounce back up. And that's why I want people to buy the book and read the book and go to Dads Against Depression and all these things I'm doing, growing my hair for 12 months, and I'm on a radio station now for a local radio station, Torbay Hospital Radio. I'm doing all these things, mate, to be a voice like you are on your My Story podcast. We need to be a voice, and I'm not going to shut up until I've helped people. I'm really not. I'll tell you warts and all. It's warts and all in the book. It's quite sad at times, but at the end, it makes you smile because I'm very close to hopefully cracking the full circle of mental health. I know that we have waves of good, We have waves of bad. You got to take the punches, you know? It's good and it's bad. Life is good and life can be very bad as well.
So, interestingly, you say that on the episode number 2 with Jess Bent, who's a football agent, she talked about her mental health and some of the struggles she'd had. And she said what she does now to try and manage that is when things are going well and something really good happens, it's not try to get too high.
Yeah,
but then
elevated,
when something comes really bad, it's like don't let it
don't get
go
too
too
low.
low either. Like
Yeah,
celebrate, but don't So I guess it's just trying to manage day by day, mate. Is the way, isn't it? So we're going to talk about the book now in just a second, and I'll put the link to it and everything in the description so people can go purchase it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to to get to the next bit of the story. You were sectioned the second time later in 2020.
Yeah.
Was that kind of a similar situation, or was that you said you had? So you bought weed which had spice in it, basically, was it?
I don't think the second look. I'm battling against that because I bought the weed off a girl who smokes it from her brother, so I don't think spice was in it. But they said they found spice in my blood again. Now, I'm contesting that currently, if I'm honest, because I didn't. I saw the bud and the girl. Yeah, she's been smoking it all her life. So if she was smoking spice, she'd be dead. So I think I had an elevated mood off the THC, and I think street weed, unfortunately, isn't monitored. So you don't know the levels of THC you're getting. So yeah, it was very similar. All my brothers and the ex were like, he just doesn't seem right. And then my brother called the police because I shouted down the phone that I was going to kill myself. Now I've told you that I wouldn't. That was me raising the alarm to say, look, shit's going down here again. Yeah. And then I woke up in a mental institution again, and I only spent 2 weeks in there this time because I knew what had happened. I knew I'd been there before, and I knew all I had to do was show them that I was fine, make sure I eat, make sure I just do as I'm told. And I was out there within 2 weeks, but then fast forward a couple more weeks, and I had elevated moods, and I've spent money that I couldn't afford to bloody spend because I thought I was this bloody superhuman being. I thought I was going to win the lottery, and you have all these thoughts, mate, that you just can't control. You just can't control the highs or the lows of what your mind sends to you. And like that woman said, the lows come, but when the highs come, you've also got to be a bit wary of the highs because you're like, hang on, this high is a little bit, this is not me. Like, why am I thinking that I'm going to win Britain's Got Talent? You know what I mean? It's that kind of like out there thinking.
Yeah, and the thing is when you get that really like that high, is the thing which comes next is the low as you come down from that high. So I guess it's managing that, isn't it? And like I say, like I can't say it enough, but if you are suffering from any form of like mental health issue, anxiety issue, the thing to do is to reach out to people and to talk, because like just quickly going back to my dad, like the root of my drinking was my father dying. My father died when I was 16. I did not deal with that until I was 35. Yeah. That's like 20 years of abusing my body with alcohol and weed and coke and pills and everything
all
else.
All of the above.
Yeah. And I'm not just talking like a weekend kind of thing in your teens and 20s.
Daily.
Like it was daily because I didn't want to be me, and it was difficult like to process that. Luckily, like I say a lot on my personal social media, which I use to kind of vent some things. Like my missus saved my life because she changed my life, because when I met her, I stopped drinking. I'd already I'd say I stopped doing other stuff. I stopped drinking, and I kind of changed the way I looked at stuff, because I was also going to be a father. And then as time's gone on, it's you have ups, you have downs, and
Yeah,
she's
100%.
she drags me through, kicking and screaming. Sometimes, like, she gets me through it. She's the one who I can trust, like 100% over everyone. Like
And you're lucky, mate. You're lucky
she's
to have
that
found
rock,
that.
and I
Yeah, yeah,
realise how
yeah,
lucky I
yeah,
am
yeah.
because
That's what I need, mate. That's exactly
well,
what I need. I need a woman who can ground me and can stop me from going back into Pandora's box. That's all I need.
yeah,
I'm just lonely, mate. Sometimes, do you know what I mean? I'm just.
it's hard, mate. It's
Yeah, it is. It is.
like the
When I
point
haven't
for
got my
me.
son.
I bet. Like, and that's see. We talked about people not being able to relate. Like, and I've got a couple of friends who are having problems getting access to their children where the relationship's broken down and stuff like that. And like, I try to be there for them, and I talk to them, and I try and advise them if that's necessary or whatever. But like, I can't relate to that. Like, so it's like I can relate to it from the point of view
I'm
of,
glad you can't, mate.
well, that's it,
I
isn't
am.
it? But like, I can't. When I say I can't relate to it, I can imagine it to the best of my ability, and it upsets me and it scares me, and I feel so bad for them. Feel bad for you, but like, I can't really properly relate to it because it hasn't happened to me.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, if it hasn't happened to you, it is difficult to really put yourself in someone's shoes. The point where I realised my missus was kind of like special and like something different to anything I'd had before is when I had my car crash in 2008, and I was left with these injuries which were going to change everything. That was 2 weeks after we got married, and she was like a few weeks pregnant with our third child. Like, that, those 2 years after that was brutal for her. She had to help me get dressed. She had to feed me sometimes, wash me, and look after 2 kids and a baby eventually. Like,
It's crazy.
that's hard. And I say a lot of the time, like, a lesser person wouldn't have been able to deal with that, and they, not a lesser person, but some people wouldn't have been able to deal with that, and they'd have said, look, this isn't what I signed up for. And they would have gone, maybe not straight away, but eventually it would have broken them, and it's just the way it is. Like, that's just humans are humans. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, mate.
I'm just very lucky. But you talked about your book, mate.
A mental health life. Yes.
Mental Health Life. Talk to me about the. So it's A Mental Health Life by Derek Glenn. Talk to me about the name.
Derek was my
the author,
dad.
Derek Glenn. Yeah,
Derek was
Derek's
my dad, and Len was my granddad, and they both died on the same day. So, 2016, my dad died on May the 2nd, and then 2020, granddad died on May the 2nd. So, I just thought it'd be a fitting tribute because I miss them both terribly. My granddad, it was his time to go. 93, had a great life, was ready to go. My dad, his life was cut short, and I don't think he ever got to discuss really with anyone his mental health. So I want people to read it, and I want them to feel that their life isn't that bad, because at the moment I'm not seeing my son because of mental health and cannabis. When things are good, I have him 50% of the time, and it's regimental. We've got set weekends, set days that I have him. But yeah, it's in honor of my dad and my granddad, and I don't know why I just didn't want to put my name on the book. I just felt it was something that, again, me probably shying away from the spotlight a little bit, and I don't want there to be, just in case it does go viral or something like that happens. I don't really want that in my life. I just want people to feel better.
You want to help people.
Yeah.
You want people to know that they can come back from what you've been through.
Yeah.
But also, you don't necessarily want like millions of people
I don't want any of that.
you and stuff. No. But the other thing I was going to ask you about, obviously you mentioned you're doing a bit of radio DJing.
Yeah.
And also, as people can see just above your name, Dads Against Depression. Talk to me about Dads Against Depression, first of all.
So the idea long term is to be a charity, but for the time being, it's a website where I'm doing a social group where we're going to meet up and have walks. I call them walkie-talkies. So, mate, they've helped me like no end. Like going for a walk with a mate or going for a walk with a few people, chatting through your worries. So Dads Against Depression, my idea is to have eventually I want to be a barber. I want to be like a mental health barber. I want to be a dad against depression. So even if it isn't, even if it doesn't become a charity, it is a trademark. So I've made it a trademark. So if I do want to make hoodies and mugs and all that type of stuff, I can do that. And I just think it sounds very powerful. And when you break it down, the acronym of Dads Against Depression is DAD, DAD. So it just kind of all made sense. And I thought, I think I was put on this earth to help mental health. I think I've been through it, and I've come out the other side as such, apart from recently. So yeah, Dads Against Depression is ideally in the future going to be a charity where I want to do coaching for kids. I want to do haircuts. I want to do drop-in centres. I want to do phone calls. If you ever want to just, you're having a tough day in work, go on your lunch break, give Dads Against Depression a call. We'll, a little bit like the Samaritans, but mate I've got like a 5-10 year plan.
Idea, mate. Yeah,
mate, I'll get you involved.
You should. That's something which you should really focus on and build, because I think is needed.
Yeah.
Sadly, I wish it wasn't. I wish it wasn't needed.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? I wish I could sit here and say, mate, that's a waste of time. You don't need to do that. But fact is, you do, and it's needed. But I just think that's such a phenomenal idea, and not just because you're you and I love you, but
I love you too, mate. Love you too.
But
always have.
So I want it to work from that point of view, but I want it to work because I think it's a great idea, and I think that long term as well, I think that will help you as well, because it will give you something to build and to focus. And I don't want to talk about myself, but I'm trying to relate as well.
It's your station.
I know, mate, but I'm trying to relate as well to what you're saying and what we're talking about. Is my missus saved my life 100%. But the other thing which saved my mental health more recently, in the last couple of years, is podcasting. And so about 2 years ago, my mental health was really suffering. I was in pain all the time. I was not happy. I was grumpy all the time. I was just really, really down, because I felt I just felt like I was waiting to die, mate. I just felt like I had no, there was no plan. I wasn't doing anything. And I was right, what can I do, but also be able to manage my health issues?
Yeah.
I'd always done a little bit of podcasting. It's still not where I want it to go, but it's getting there. Getting there.
Mate,
it's growing, mate. It's getting there.
You play it down so much, you do. I told you off air, and I'll say it again. What you've done, mate, and for me to be on this, it's fantastic, mate. Do not ever underappreciate what you've done. You had 10,000 people, 10,000 people were doing it. 10,000 people, Simon. 10,000 people, Mr. Willis.
Still mental.
It's amazing. And I'm glad that the idea of Dads Against Depression resounds with you, because you're going to be able to help me. You're a dad. You've had depression. You will be involved with every step along the way, because things like this are going to give me exposure. There's going to be people who are going to watch this who are going to go, do you know what? I relate to a lot of what that guy's just said. And I wanted to be a person who wasn't a celebrity, who wasn't a bigwig, who just wrote it as it was. I didn't want it to be someone from Towie or someone from Love Island committing suicide or Caroline Flack committing. I don't want it just to be these celebrities that are giving mental health a shout out, because 9 times out of 10 there's something else at the end of it. I want to have a foundation or a charity. That's my dream. My dream is to be, in 10 years' time, a CEO of Dads Against Depression, helping guys and women alike to get through life. And like you just said, mate, sometimes we are just sitting there thinking, I'm just waiting to bloody die. And you can't live like that, because life is for living, and we only get one shot, mate. And you've exceeded all expectations that I had with your podcast. It probably was going to go from 10 or 15 people every now and again listening. You've got Andy Campbell, Kevin. Mate, you chat with people who I idolise. So I'm chatting with another person, yourself.
It's a bit weird, mate. It's strange sometimes, I got to say. And I said that to you before. It is strange sometimes. It is. Look, I think having the thing which helps me, at least, is having a plan. Like we've got certain plans
Structure.
for the football show, because that's like the flagship show. That's the show which kind of gets the most views live, and there's interest from certain places, and like that's the flagship, and then everything else is kind of something which I'm just sort of expanding and building and trying new things, and it'll go where it goes. Like I've taken a bit of pressure off myself. Like at the start, it was very much like I have to do this, and I got to do it. It's got to achieve this, and it's got to have this. Now I'm just like, I'm gonna do what I want, and if people like it, they like it. Some things will work, some things won't.
See, I can relate to that, mate, because I've had to do the same thing with the book. At one point, I was thinking, I'll easily sell 200 copies, and now I'm thinking, do you know what? I'll be very happy if I sell 200 copies, because, like we said, mate, not everyone jumps on board and supports. Some people will shy away from supporting their friends for some reason. So it's going to be a slow burner, mate, but this book ain't going anywhere, mate. This book is going to be there. If I need to print another 300 copies, I will. If people really want to read it and really want to think life can be tough, but I'm not the only one dealing with it, then honestly, it's a book that will make you smile. It's a book that might make you cry, but it's warts and all. I promise you, you won't regret buying it. I haven't got a platform at the moment to buy it on. You can email me at adamcarew@me.com, but I'm struggling with all that. I haven't got much support down in Torquay, mate. I'm a lone ranger, so having you as a support, mate, and mate, I loved you the moment I met you. From football days and from Radar Arms days. I know you've got my back, and I've got yours, 100%, mate, 100%.
Absolutely, mate. And I'll put links into your Dads Against Depression Insta page, and I'll speak to you now in a minute after we finish about how you might be able to set up a page to sell the book as well.
Okay, mate.
I just had an idea, but as you can see just below Adam's beautiful face, you can see at Dads_Against Depression on Instagram. Is that just Instagram, mate, or is there any other social media platforms?
So I'm not on Facebook at the moment with it, but the main thing is my Instagram. It's not very lively at the moment because it's all new, just like with your podcast. I'm very new to all this. I've got a GoFundMe, which I'm growing my hair. But you know what? I will do a shout out for my radio show. So
indeed,
it's mental health based. You can listen live on torbayhospitalradio.com, and it's 10 till 12 every Monday. I'm trying to turn Mondays into fun days, mate. So have a little listen if you want to. But yeah, the main thing I would say is if you want to get in contact about the book, it's Adam Carew, as you can see underneath, at memotherEcho.com.
Indeed, I'll put links to the email, the Instagram page, the web, and also the radio station and stuff, all in the description below. Also subscribe to youtube.com/ACE and click the bell for notifications, and you can keep up to date on everything on social media. Adam, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for your honesty, mate, as well. I really appreciate you.
Mate, you're welcome, and I've loved every second of it, and I'll happily come on in another couple of months and tell you where my journey is at that point, because hopefully by then I'll be another few stages down the line in my recovery from being sectioned. So, mate, thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
100%, mate. We'll definitely do it again. Guys, we'll be back next Sunday, 8 o'clock, with another episode of My Story. Join us.
Desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got change to throw, I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the show so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, top of the world. 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 Of the world. When I hear him come like my fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this up. You can sing my song if you want, I know you want it. It's always kinda funny, cause you know I'm a superstar in the sky to lead you on. Haters gonna hate, it's a proof of how they love. They can bring me down, nah, they are jealous. they love me so.